Have you ever heard footsteps in a place no one has ever walked? Have you ever looked into a mirror and saw a version of yourself that shouldn't exist? And have you ever picked up an object so familiar, only to realize it never belonged to you? Welcome to Whispher Horror Channel, where the forgotten, the forbidden, and the fractured memories come back to life. I'm your narrator, and tonight, we begin a chilling descent into 3 true horror stories. Stories not from the realm of fantasy, but ones that echo a disturbing question. What if your identity, your time, your reality, isn't yours anymore? Before we begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below. Where are you watching from? And more importantly, what time is it, right now? You'll want to remember that, because some of these stories play with time in ways you won't expect. Now, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare to step into the first story. A group of explorers enters a forest known only through whispers, where no GPS works, no memories remain intact, and something ancient waits beneath the soil. This is the Phantom of Dead Valley. The Phantom of Dead Valley. Kai set his heavy backpack on the office floor, his eyes still fixed on the computer screen displaying newly updated topographical maps of the western wilderness from satellite imagery. As a photographer specializing in capturing mysterious and rarely visited places, he was working on a series titled Silent Territories, documenting forgotten landscapes on the American map. To complete the next installment, the editorial board requested Kai to find an unexplored location. The more mysterious the better, the more haunting material, the more it would attract readers. And that's when Kai stumbled upon the name Dead Valley, a faint cluster of symbols clinging precariously to the edge of the Oregon state map. There wasn't much information. No tourist photos, no reviews, even Google Maps showed only a hazy white space. An abandoned blog post mentioned the name Ancient Burial Valley, with a brief warning, "We found it, and we never left." The more he read, the more Kai was drawn in. He decided to make this his next destination, both to complete his assignment for the editorial and hoping to expand his personal archive. But he didn't want to go alone. Maya, Kai's girlfriend, was an independent explorer, having lived for years in Alaska and familiar with setting up tents and surviving in the wild. She was rational, calm, but possessed strong intuition. Although somewhat skeptical, Maya agreed to go with Kai as a weekend camping trip. Reese, an old friend of Kai's, currently a freelance survival guide, who had served in the National Forest Rescue Team. Experienced and knowledgeable about the terrain, Reese was the first person Kai thought of when planning the trip. He agreed immediately, on the condition that he lead the group into an area of the forest he called untouched by modern human footsteps. Samira, a travel influencer with nearly 500,000 followers on Instagram, Maya's close friend, who happened to hear about the trip and insisted on coming along. She not only wanted Forbidden Land footage for her personal TikTok channel but also wanted to experience living in a place rumored to be cursed. Finally, there was Zara, a final-year medical student, the youngest in the group, who had once helped Reese treat injuries during a survival training. Zara was overly curious, but her first aid skills reassured everyone somewhat. 5 individuals, 5 different reasons. They met at the starting point, a small mountain town named Ash Pine. From there, the group would drive deep into the forest, to an area believed to be the edge of the ancient Burial Valley, a place where no media worked stably. "Don't expect Wi-Fi," Reese warned with a half-smile, as he loaded water bottles and rescue kits onto the car roof. "Out there, even compasses sometimes go crazy." Before leaving the last gas station in town, Reese's phone vibrated. No caller ID. He picked up. A voice echoed from the other end, hoarse, broken, as if muffled by cloth. Stay away. That land doesn't want visitors. Reese hung up, frowning at the "no signal" message. He didn't tell anyone about the call. The road leading into the forest grew narrower, muddier, and overgrown with weeds. Samira filmed continuously, excitedly commenting on the feeling like walking into a real-life Blair Witch forest. Kai occasionally stopped to photograph drooping branches and strange moss-covered rocks. Towards noon, as the sun reached its peak, the group paused in a small clearing in the forest, where light filtering through the canopy formed a faint swirling pattern on the ground. Reese said, "We'll set up camp here. High and flat. If it rains, it won't flood." Zara pitched her tent with Maya, Samira took check-in photos, and Kai walked around filming footage with his personal camera. He didn't realize, on a nearby tree, a strange symbol was carved, a circle cut in half by a blurred human figure, seemingly being pulled into the ground. That evening, they sat around the campfire, telling ghost stories, roasting marshmallows, and sharing their hopes for the trip. Samira asked Reese, "Have you ever heard any stories about this valley?" Reese shook his head. But Kai interjected. Half joking, half serious, someone said, "There used to be a village somewhere in this forest. The whole village disappeared overnight. No one knows why. But they say anyone who enters will bring back a piece of memory that doesn't belong to them." No one laughed. The campfire crackled. Wind began to blow. From afar, a rustling sound echoed, as if someone was gliding through the bushes. But no one mentioned it. They didn't know that tonight, in their dreams, one of them would see themselves, but in a different place. In a memory that never existed. As the sun disappeared behind the distant mountains, the campsite gradually sank into the dull gray of late afternoon. The wind began to shift direction, bringing with it a damp, musty smell, as if from a place buried for centuries. Reese built a fire. Maya checked the tents. Zara rearranged her medical kit. Kai walked around setting up a few more shots for the vlog. Samira, as usual, was filming for social media, talking and laughing. First day in ancient burial valley, no network, no car sounds, no people. Perfect for getting killed in a horror movie. None of them realized there were no bird songs, no insect sounds, no life at all besides themselves. Close to midnight, Kai left his tent to relieve himself. He shined his flashlight into the forest. About 10 meters ahead, the light hit a strange shape. A wooden sign, its letters faded, stuck crookedly in the ground. He approached. On the sign, scrawled in black paint, "Do not enter, this place does not want you." Kai blinked. The words he just saw disappeared. The sign was now just a blank piece of wood. He backed away, instinctively turning his light toward where their tents should be, but it was just a dark, ominous void. For a moment, he felt like he was standing in a completely different place. A rustling sound to his left made Kai spin around. His light swept across, no one was there. But right behind him, a tall, thin figure stood just a few steps away, staring silently. Its eyes were too deep, hollow sockets reflecting the light. Its face had no mouth. Kai screamed, falling backward. Footsteps from the camp rushed over. Reese ran up, sweeping his flashlight around. No one was there. No sign. Only Kai sitting, gasping for breath in the grass, his face pale. I saw someone, Kai stammered. You must be tired, Reese said, helping him up. Get some rest. We have a lot to do tomorrow. But Kai knew it wasn't a hallucination. The next morning, the group split up to explore the surroundings. Reese led the way along a faint trail, pushing through dense bushes. They discovered a dilapidated wooden house hidden under withered vines. Nestled in a small valley. Signs of time were everywhere, scorched walls, a rotting roof, window panes gone. But one thing made them all freeze. On the wall, there were still human handprints. Pressed deep into the wood as if someone had imprinted them with dried blood. Zara was about to take out her phone to photograph it when she discovered her camera was shattered. The screen completely black. Samira sighed, I've lost signal completely since last night. Can't send anything. The whole group fell silent. Reese pulled open the door of the house. Inside was a dark, musty space. On a rotting table, a tattered rag doll lay sideways, its head turned towards the door as if waiting for someone to return. Kai took a picture. But in the photo, there wasn't just the doll, a small figure stood right behind Reese, looking straight into the lens. No one in the group noticed this at the time. That evening, the group sat around the campfire. Samira opened her laptop to review the videos she filmed that morning. When it came to the segment around the old house, the image started to glitch. A frame appeared, she was filming herself. With Reese behind her, and a bruised, pale-faced woman with vacant eyes, leaning close behind Reese's back. Maya panicked, snatching the laptop from Samira's hands. Cut that out. But Samira couldn't. The file was locked. Even when she tried to shut down the laptop, the screen wouldn't turn off. The image kept repeating, the ghostly face getting closer and closer. Zara cried. Reese jumped up. We have to go. Tomorrow. But that very night, everything spiraled out of control. At midnight, Reese left his tent after hearing someone call his name. He grabbed his flashlight and followed the sound, a woman's whispered voice, repeating, gentle as a lullaby, Reese. Reese, come back. The calling led him deeper into the forest. The flashlight flickered. Then died completely. Kai woke up to a terrifying scream. The whole group rushed out. Reese was gone. All that remained was a long drag mark on the ground as if something had pulled him into the bushes. And a muddy barefoot print, clearly visible on the ground. Not Reese's. The morning after Reese disappeared, the fog was thick like white smoke, clinging to the leaves and saturating the air. No one spoke. Samira knelt near her tent, clutching the zipper. Her eyes vacant. Zara sat with her knees drawn up, her hands trembling despite the lack of cold. Maya walked slowly around the smoldering campfire. As if trying to find some normal rhythm, but nothing was normal anymore. Kai was the only one who stood up. He held a paper map, though he knew it was useless. The landmarks were gone. The terrain didn't match. The only thing left was a clear feeling. He was trapped in a place that defied all natural laws. We have to go. Now, he said, trying to keep his voice calm. Reese might still be alive. Maya looked at him. Do you think someone took him? No. But I don't think we're dealing with a someone. It's a something. Zara burst into tears. We're being watched. I've felt it since the first night. Samira slowly turned around. I saw it. She whispered, her eyes still distant. In the camera. There was something standing behind Reese. Very tall. Pale face. No mouth. But I think, it smiled. A cold gust of wind swept through, making the tent flap gently. Kai tightened his backpack straps. Let's go. Pick a direction and just walk. Otherwise, we'll slowly die here. No one objected. But no one truly believed they would ever leave this place. They began their journey out of camp around 10 a.m. The fog had not yet lifted. Every step sank into the wet, rotting leaves, like moss mixed with blood. No one spoke. They just walked, breathed, and listened for something they couldn't name. Moving silently among the trees. Zara constantly looked back. Maya walked last, her eyes fixed on Kai's back. As for Samira, she still held her camera, though the battery was critically low. After about an hour of walking, the path they chose began to slope upward. They hoped to find a signal higher up. But when they reached the top of the slope, the sight before them made everyone freeze. Their old campsite appeared right before their eyes. Exactly the same tent location, campfire. And even the jacket Kai had hung on a branch yesterday. They had walked in a circle. No way, Zara gasped. Samira looked down at her watch. It had stopped long ago, stuck at 10:47. Kai looked up. A wave of dizziness washing over him. We can't get out of here. Maya slammed her hand against a tree trunk. No. We haven't tried everything. There has to be a way. I don't think we're in a normal forest anymore, Kai said, his eyes fixed on the campsite. We're trapped in it. And it knows our every step. That evening, they didn't light a fire. No one was brave enough to look into the light, fearing that in the firelight they would see faces that no longer belonged to this world. They huddled in their tent. No one slept. The sounds outside the forest began to get stranger, not wind, nor animals. It was a rustling sound, like robes brushing gently through leaves. And sometimes, children's laughter echoed, very faintly, very far away. Close to midnight, Kai opened his eyes, and saw Samira standing in front of the tent, motionless. Samira, he whispered. She didn't turn around. Her hand was raised, holding her camera, pointing towards the forest. Kai stepped out, placing a hand on her shoulder. It was icy cold. What are you doing? Samira turned, her eyes were vacant white. No pupils. She exhaled a long breath, cold as ice, blowing into Kai's throat. I think, it's using me to see. Then she collapsed. Kai embraced her, calling for Maya. Zara rushed over, checking her pulse. Still breathing, but very weak. As if her body is shutting down. Maya's voice trembled, it's eating us alive. Kai placed his hand on Samira's forehead, her skin was cold as a corpse. They stayed awake all night. No one dared to sleep. Near dawn, Samira opened her eyes, and began to scream. She couldn't see anything. Couldn't hear anyone. As if all her senses were detached from her body. I don't know where I am. I can't see anything. It's whispering, in my head. Zara covered her ears, tears streaming down her face. Kai yelled, we have to get out of here. What do you want from us? Silence. No reply. Only a black hand just glided past the edge of the tent, just enough for Kai to see, then dissolved into the fog. That morning, Samira was gone. No bloodstains. No footprints. No screams. Only her camera placed neatly on her backpack, next to a line of text carved into the tree bark, one more. Not enough yet. This time, No one spoke. Maya squeezed Kai's hand. Zara collapsed onto his shoulder, sobbing. Kai looked deep into the forest. For the first time, he wanted to pray. No more Samira. No more laughter. No more hope. The remaining three sat around the clearing among the dense trees, where the main camp used to be. The morning light filtered thinly through the thick fog, making everything look as if it existed underwater, dark, heavy, and with no escape. Zara didn't speak. She huddled in a blanket, her eyes red and swollen, her hands clutching the small wooden crucifix hanging around her neck. Her lips moved in a whispered prayer, repeating like a child with psychosis. Kai walked around the campsite, his camera dangling from his hip, no longer used to capture anything. He just did it to stay sane. Every time he stopped, he felt something watching from behind, but when he turned, there was only the forest. As for Maya, she was writing frantically in her notebook, her handwriting shaky and smudged with ink. If anyone finds these lines, don't follow our tracks. Don't enter this forest. It's not where humans belong. Reese, Samira, they're not missing. They were taken. Kept. And I think, it will be our turn soon. Kai secretly read those lines when Maya went to get water. He didn't blame her, because he himself had stopped believing they could survive. At noon, they tried one last time. They packed their belongings, chose a completely new direction, not following a map, not relying on a compass. Just walked. Without looking back. They walked for 2 hours. Zara gradually couldn't keep up, her feet bleeding from constant tripping. Each time she got up, she claimed to hear her mother calling her name, echoing from the forest. Zara, Maya took her hand. Don't listen. It's not real. No, it's her real voice. I know, Zara whispered, then burst into tears. I don't want to die here. Kai looked at his watch. Nearly 3 in the afternoon. The sky was still gloomy. Time wasn't passing normally, it seemed stuck, drained. They stopped beside a large tree to rest. Kai closed his eyes for a moment. And then he heard Zara scream, "The path! I see a trail!" She rushed forward, running through the bushes. Maya yelled, "Zara! Stop!" But it was too late. When Kai and Maya caught up, they saw an absolute void in the middle of the forest, round as if carved out of nature. In the center, Zara stood with her back turned, motionless. Maya called her name. No response. Kai took a step forward. "Zara, turn around. We're here." Zara still didn't move. And then, like a puppet whose strings were cut, her body collapsed, silently. When they reached her, Zara was no longer breathing. Her eyes wide open. Her mouth slightly agape as if she had just screamed something, but no one heard. Kai trembled as he checked her wrist. There was a circular bruise with 3 black dots, exactly like the marks that had appeared on Maya and him. The only difference was, this mark had spread like a spiderweb, bruising one side of her chest dark purple. Maya sank to her knees, burying her face in her hands. Kai held Zara's body, unsure what to do. In that moment, he felt something standing right behind him. Icy cold. The air thickened. And a whisper resonated, right next to his ear, like wind cutting through metal. 2 left. That night, they didn't return to the old camp. Kai temporarily set up a makeshift shelter inside a small rock cave, nestled deep between 2 dry creek beds. Maya sat silently beside him, her hand never leaving her pen. Kai, If one of us has to live, what will the other do? Kai didn't answer immediately. He looked up at the cave ceiling, where water dripped like a ticking countdown clock. I'll become a monk, he whispered. Maya gave a weak laugh. You don't believe in God. But I believe in devils. Close to midnight, Maya disappeared. Kai woke up in the cold rock cave. No Maya. No footsteps. No sound at all except the monotonous drip, drip, drip of water from the cave ceiling onto the rock floor. A maddeningly monotonous sound. He turned on his flashlight. The flickering light swept across the damp rock face, finding no trace. Only his backpack and Maya's notebook, neatly placed on a flat stone slab, the last page unfinished, the ink still fresh. Kai trembled as he flipped through the previous pages. There was a section written in a slanted, bolder hand than usual. I understand now. It needs a willing volunteer. Not a blood sacrifice, but a will. Someone who accepts entering the darkness, with no hope of return. If I do that, maybe you'll have a chance to leave. But only one. Kai dropped the notebook. As if it burned his hands. He gasped for breath, his eyes blurring with tears. No. Maya, not that way. The echo of his voice bounced off the cave walls, like a cold slap. He sprang up. Rushing out of the cave like a madman. His feet slipped on the damp ground, his head hit branches, but he kept running. Thorns tore at his skin, but he felt nothing. On his shoulder, blood bloomed into a large stain. It wasn't dawn yet, but the fog had changed color, from gray to a dull reddish glow, as if dyed by sunset, or something worse. Kai was disoriented. He no longer knew where he was going. His feet moved aimlessly among the silent trees. Sometimes, he thought he heard footsteps beside him, but when he turned, he was alone. Sometimes, he felt someone's hand brush his shoulder, light as a strand of hair, but when he turned his head, it was just cold emptiness. He collapsed beside a tree trunk, his heart pounding like a drum. His mind reeled. The cold seeped into his bones. As he was about to pass out, he suddenly saw a light. A faint flicker of light among the branches, shimmering like a flickering candle. Kai struggled to get up, crawling step by step towards the light. At the end of the light trail was a dilapidated wooden house, hidden under layers of vines and roots. No roof. No door. But inside, there was fire. Not real fire, but a faint glow like dying embers. And in the middle of the floor, there was a small, dusty table, holding a stack of old papers tied with twine. Kai approached, opened the stack of papers. It was the journal of someone who had been trapped here. My wife and I came here in 1996. Just camping. Then she heard a voice calling her name. Every night, it got closer. Then she walked into the forest, and never came back. I saw it. A tall, faceless figure. It didn't walk, didn't run, didn't lunge. It just stood there. Waiting. I couldn't escape. But I learned how to avoid it. If anyone reads this, don't look it directly in the eyes. And if someone sacrifices themselves for you, go. Don't look back. Kai dropped the journal. His hands trembled uncontrollably. In the darkness behind him, there was a sound of footsteps. Slow. Grinding. A faint chuckle, as if someone was enjoying watching him. He sprang up, ran. Kai ran through the forest like a cornered animal. Blood flowed from his forehead, his feet slipped on moss-covered stone steps. He no longer knew where he was going. But in a moment of ultimate despair, a voice echoed in his head, gentle, very soft, Maya's voice, "Don't stop." Left. He turned left. Through the rock crevice. "Be careful of the roots." He squeezed through the narrow crevice, dodging gnarled roots like dead fingers. Almost there, Kai, keep going. Every time he wanted to collapse, that voice echoed again. Until he saw sunlight. For the first time in days, real sunlight, not distorted, not blood red, not flickering. He burst out of the forest like a drowning man surfacing from water. Ahead was a dirt road. And further, the roof of a small church, standing silently in a field of tall grass. Summer in a rural Oregon town passed like any other year, slowly, uneventfully. Only one new thing appeared. The man in the small church on the edge of the village. No one knew his name. No one knew where he came from. They only knew he arrived on a foggy morning, barefoot, his body covered in injuries. His eyes dull like ashes. He never left the church. Never. The local priest, a kind old man named Father Lambert, found him unconscious beneath the altar. After administering first aid, he tried to ask what had happened. The man didn't answer. He left water and bread, and left. The next time he returned, the water was low, the bread gone. But the man was still sitting in the same spot, his eyes fixed on the crucifix, as if awaiting judgment. 1 week. 1 month. Then 6 months. People began to call him by many names, the survivor. The mute, the saint of the forest, or simply, the man in the church. Only the children, curious and daring, dared to sneak in and ask him. One of them said, "I asked him why he wouldn't come out. He just smiled, but it was a sad smile." Then he said that sentence. What sentence? "If one day you see ancient Burial Valley on a map, burn that map." Sometimes, on rainy nights, people saw him standing motionless before the church door, his eyes fixed on the horizon, where there was nothing but deep forest and dark clouds. Some heard him muttering something, like calling a name. Maya. But no one was sure. A year later, a group of geography students from another state found an old map fragment. On it, there was an unnamed location. Marked only with a faded red ink symbol, DV. One of them asked Father Lambert, "Is there a place called Dead Valley around here, Father?" He just shook his head. "No, my child. If there were, it wouldn't be on any map anymore." Sometimes, we think a survivor is a winner. But for Kai, survival was a punishment. He couldn't sleep. Couldn't dream. No longer felt hunger or thirst. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his friends' eyes, one by one, as if asking him a question he dared not answer. Why were you the only one allowed to leave? Kai had no answer. He only knew one thing: he never truly left. That valley was still within him, through every breath, every dream, and in the unspeakable fear he carried every day. No one came looking for him. No one was brave enough to ask more questions. There was only a whispered legend, spreading throughout the western forest fringes: there's a small church on the edge of the world. Inside is a man who speaks to no one. But if you ask him about ancient Burial Valley, he will answer. Only once. And if you listen, you'll never dare open a map again. Dead Valley claimed them, one by one. But what if your soul wasn't taken by the forest, but by time itself? Our next story leads us into a much colder terror. A place where memories loop, identities fracture, and time becomes the most dangerous predator of all. This is the Chronos Shadow. The Chronos Shadow. Opening, the haunting introduction, the hooks. Have you ever felt time working against you? That every tick-tock of the clock isn't moving you forward, but pulling you back. Back to a moment you can't even remember why it haunts you so much. Have you ever stared at a clock, only to find a minute just didn't exist? Welcome to Whispher Horror channel, where we tell stories that time has tried to bury. Memories warped. Moments falling out of the stream of reality. And shadows that don't live in space, but exist between the beats of time you've missed. Today, we will tell you a story. A story about a man. A new house. A friendly neighbor. And an entity with no face. No footsteps, but always beside you, in the exact moments you're not paying attention. Listen carefully. Because after this story, every tick-tock you hear might not be time passing, but the footsteps of a shadow drawing closer to you. Leo was used to silence. As a freelance graphic designer, he worked from home, lived alone, and above all, preferred the feeling that everything was in order. Time in his life was divided into clear blocks like a design blueprint. 7 a.m. wake up, 7:30 exercise, 8 o'clock make coffee, 8:30 start work. Leo's day operated like a clockwork machine, no delays, no early starts, no changes. When he moved into a new house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, Leo was almost completely satisfied. The house was clean, the neighbors were pleasant, and especially Alan, the middle-aged man living right next door, was always willing to help. Alan often waved hello in the morning, sometimes inviting Leo over for tea. There was something about him that made Leo feel at ease. A polite, quiet man. Always paying attention to small details, like when Leo was late for work, Alan would ask, "Sleeping in today?" At first, Leo was happy to be noticed. But gradually, he began to realize something wasn't right. Alan knew too much. Not just his work schedule, but where Leo usually got coffee, when Leo came home. And even that he used to date but stopped because he didn't want to disrupt his routine. "You seem lonely," Alan once said when he caught Leo taking out the trash. "But I guess you like it that way. You're afraid something will ruin the familiar rhythm." Leo smiled, but a chill ran down his spine. No one had ever told him that, even close friends had never understood how much Leo cherished regularity. Wednesday morning, Leo set his alarm for 7 a.m. as usual. He distinctly remembered the alarm not ringing. When he looked at the clock, it showed 6:58, then jumped straight to 7:02. No alarm. No ring. No minutes passed. He briefly thought the clock was broken. But his digital clock was a high-end model, synchronized with a government server. He restarted his phone. Checked the time zone. All were accurate. Just a strange feeling, as if those 4 minutes had never existed. That day, Leo received a strange text from an anonymous number. "That green shirt looks good today. Suits your mood this morning." Leo looked down at his shirt, a moss green hoodie. He hadn't posted any photos, hadn't checked himself in a mirror, hadn't met anyone. The message arrived at 7:41 a.m., just as he was stepping out the door. The message didn't scare Leo, but it made him uneasy. As if someone was trying to get ahead of him. Like, they weren't simply observing, but knowing in advance. A few days later, another message appeared, this time even more specific. "You're having an extra shot of espresso at Corner Cafe, aren't you?" The message arrived at 9:27 a.m. Leo received it while standing in line, before ordering his drink. He immediately changed his order. No more espresso. It felt as if he was being led by something invisible. Like a mouse running in a maze someone else had drawn. One night, Leo was watching an old movie. The clock showed 2:42 a.m. The movie was reaching its climax when he heard 3 knocks on the door, clear, steady, unhurried. He opened it. No one was there. A chill crawled down his spine, not out of fear, but because it was illogical. Who would knock on the door at 2:44 a.m.? He looked over at Alan's house. The kitchen light was still dimly lit. Leo remembered, Alan often took early morning walks. Usually around that time. But he had never bothered Leo. He turned back inside, checking his doorbell camera. No one was at the door for the past 5 minutes. Not a soul. Not a movement. Only the clock, still ticking steadily. But since that night, Leo no longer believed that time was passing. It was being rewritten. Leo couldn't sleep anymore. After that night, he reset his daily schedule, installed more cameras on the porch, and added motion sensor lights. He tried to believe that the unease was just the result of a few anonymous texts and an offbeat knock. But deep down, a part of him understood, this was no longer within the bounds of reason. Saturday morning, while watering plants on his porch, Leo discovered something that sent chills down his spine. A tiny, discreet camera, hidden behind a flower pot on the right side. It wasn't a cheap one, anti-glare lens, wireless connection, and secured with industrial-grade tape. Leo no longer had any doubt. Someone was watching him. And only one person was close enough. Idle enough, concerned enough, Alan. That very afternoon, Leo walked next door. Alan opened the door with his usual smile, but when Leo held out the camera, the smile faltered for a few seconds. "Oh," Alan stammered. It's just for security. You live alone, I just want to make sure you're safe. Nothing bad, I promise. I'll take it down." Leo said nothing more. But as he turned to walk away, he knew, Alan was hiding something. The next night, Leo checked the memory card inside the camera. Strangely, it contained nothing, no video clips, no log files. Nothing. There was only a single frame. A frozen image, Leo bending over, flipping a flower pot, at the exact moment he discovered the camera. In the corner of the screen, the time displayed was 2:44 a.m. This was also the exact time he had heard the knock on the door a few nights earlier. He tried to delete it. Couldn't. Tried to format the memory card. Couldn't. He tried to open the file with a hex reader, but each time he opened it, it reverted to that exact frame, as if every operation was reversed. Monday morning. Leo was working when he suddenly found himself, standing in the middle of the living room, holding his phone, with a map app displayed on the screen. He didn't remember getting up from his desk. Didn't remember walking through the hallway. Didn't remember why he opened the map. He looked at the clock, 11:47 a.m. But in his memory, it was only 11:41. 6 minutes, blank. He tried to retrace his steps, but his mind was foggy. No clues surfaced. It was as if time wasn't flowing, but being cut and pasted, skipped, then reassembled by someone else. As time went on, these missing time gaps appeared more frequently. Sometimes it was 2 minutes. Sometimes up to 10. During these times, he would often be working, then suddenly find himself in the kitchen. Or standing by the front door, or holding something he didn't remember picking up. The digital clocks in his house still worked. But sometimes, they would jump. 1 minute would be swallowed. Then the next minute would be repeated. One day, he saw the clock running backward for a few seconds. Then it would correct itself, as if nothing had happened. Voices in his head began in the late afternoons. Unclear. No distinct voice. Just short, disjointed fragments of conversation, sometimes his own voice, saying things he had never thought of. "I'm going to get coffee." He heard that sentence while typing an email, with no intention of leaving the house. But then, just 3 minutes later, he felt thirsty, got up, and walked out the door. He froze in the hallway. That sentence came first. It wasn't a thought. It wasn't an intuition. It was a command installed before the action took place. Meticulous, and very, very familiar with the rhythm of his life. But it wasn't Alan. Nor anyone watching him through cameras. It was something else, living within the time gaps he didn't notice. Leo began to document everything. Every minute that passed. Every small action. He used a notebook instead of his phone, fearing that all digital data would be altered without his knowledge. Not because he missed it, but because the words had disappeared. The pen was still there, the ink marks still faintly visible under the light, but the words were gone. The sofa was shifted 5 centimeters, even though Leo clearly remembered measuring it to align with the coffee table the night before. The outlet moved to the left wall. The curtains changed color, from ash gray to light brown. And the worst part, the bathroom mirror. Every morning, his reflection was slightly off. One day, his hair in the mirror was shorter. Another day, he wore a shirt he had never bought. But the most terrifying time was when he looked in the mirror and saw himself standing motionless. Eyes wide open, while his real self was tilting his head, blinking normally. That moment lasted only a second. But it was a second that made all his definitions of reality crumble. Alan returned. Knocking on the door after a week's absence. He looked haggard, his eyes dark, his hands trembling. "You see it too, don't you?" Alan asked, without preamble. "See time no longer flowing straight. Before you. And before me, there was someone else. Every time it finishes its work, a new person moves in." "What is it?" Leo asked. Alan didn't answer immediately. He pulled an old, mechanical pocket watch from his coat pocket. He opened the lid. Inside, there were no hands, no numbers, just a blank, inky black watch face. "This is how I keep myself." Not to be synchronized by it, Alan whispered. "You have to understand, it doesn't live in the present. It's the gap between two moments. It's the tick-tock that human ears can't hear. It's the forgotten part of time. The shadow of the clock. Not the shadow of an object, but the shadow of time itself." That evening, Leo tried something. He set 3 clocks, 1 digital, 1 analog, 1 wristwatch. He left his phone recording, lights on all night, without blinking. At 3:03 a.m., he saw it. The analog clock stopped exactly when both hands overlapped. The digital clock flickered, blurring for 2 seconds. And in the video recording, a figure glided across the corner of the room, no sound, no clear shape. Just a vague presence, as if the room itself was contracting for a moment. He rewound. Watched it over and over. No mistake. That thing didn't come from outside. It manifested from within the rhythm of the clock. Leo began to fear time. He avoided looking at clocks. Didn't set alarms. Didn't schedule work. But that only made things worse. He no longer knew what day he was living in. One day, he believed it was Monday, but at the supermarket, he saw everyone preparing for the weekend holiday. Sometimes, he would just step into the kitchen and the porch light would turn on, signaling movement, then turn off, then turn back on. As if another him had just gone out and returned, while he stood still. And then, one night, looking out the window, Leo saw Alan standing in the yard, eyes wide open, pointing at his wrist with his finger. His mouth didn't move, but in Leo's head, a clear sentence echoed, "When the clock hands overlap for the third time, you will no longer be you." Leo rushed to the door. But Alan was gone. Only the pocket watch remained on the doorstep, its face empty. And this time, inside it, there was a drop of blood. Leo didn't know why he went to the backyard. He only remembered that after seeing the drop of blood in the pocket watch, he clutched it tightly, walking like a sleepwalker. The back door opened soundlessly. Fog covered the path. A light breeze carried the acrid smell of damp grass and decaying wood. He had never noticed the backyard was so vast. Under the dim moonlight, everything seemed unreal. The fence disappeared. Trees grew in unnaturally straight rows, the ground sloped down like a giant time well, bottomless, weightless. In the middle of the clearing was an old wooden chair. And Alan was sitting there. But it wasn't the Alan Leo had known. His face was longer, cheekbones more prominent, skin pale as if all blood had drained. His eyes, which once held a calm gaze, were now black as black holes that sucked in all light. "Alan?" Leo asked. He didn't reply. Only raised a hand, pointing towards a wall covered in vines. Leo approached. A wooden door emerged from behind the foliage. No handle. No hinges. But a gentle touch made it open by itself, leading down a spiral stone staircase, deep into darkness. With each step Leo took down, time felt fluid. As if every moment was no longer continuous but separated, floating around him, sometimes repeating, sometimes disappearing entirely. The bottom floor was a circular room, its walls covered in clocks, hundreds of them, all shapes, sizes, eras. All were stopped. The hands pointed to different hours. None were alike. And in the center of the room, on a stone pedestal, on it, was a large notebook, leather-bound, old, heavy. Leo flipped it open. No words. Only strange carvings, waves, dots. Diagonal lines, not a language, but more like a map of memory. A voice resonated, not from Alan's mouth, but directly into Leo's mind. "It doesn't swallow time. It plants time. Every forgotten memory is a seed. Every forgotten minute is a seedling. And they grow, here." Leo trembled. "Who are you?" he managed to ask. "Alan used to be me," the voice continued. "Just like you are now. We are called the gardeners of lost time. Every time someone lets time slip from their hands, a part of them falls into this garden. And we, those who once resisted it, become the caretakers of those lost fragments of time." Leo backed away, terrified. "No. I'm not like you. I still remember everything, I'm still whole." Alan's figure stood up. Not walking like a normal person, but gliding across the floor, moving towards Leo. "You ceased to be you the first time the clock hands overlapped 3 times. Leo screamed, ran out of the room, climbing back up the stairs. But the garden wasn't there anymore. He burst through the door, and found himself standing, in his own kitchen. The wall clock showed 2:44 a.m. Coffee was still hot on the counter. His laptop was still open to his email. As if nothing had ever happened. Only the pocket watch, still in his hand, its face empty, but this time, the hour hand was twitching. Not in a circle, but like a compass needle, pointing at him. Leo began writing a journal every hour. Not because he wanted to record it, but because he couldn't remember anymore. Some mornings he woke up to completely unfamiliar sentences in his own notebook. The handwriting was still his. The writing style, the words, all the same. But the content was eerily strange. I went to the garden for the third time. Alan was silent today. I heard scratching from under the sink. I saw myself walk past the mirror. But I haven't been near it all day. Leo had never written those lines. Or perhaps, some version of him had. Time was no longer linear for Leo. Conversations repeated. Events occurred before he could even think about them. One time he was having lunch when his phone buzzed with a message from Alan. "You're going to drop your spoon right now." And at that exact moment, the spoon fell from his hand. Not out of fear, but as if his hand was merely performing a pre-programmed motion, and Alan was simply reading the script back to him. Leo tried to escape. He booked a flight, packed his luggage, left town that very night. But as the taxi reached the first intersection, he suddenly found himself waking up in his bed. The plane ticket was still in his hand. His clothes were still in his suitcase. No sign he had ever left. Only his alarm clock flashing continuously, 2:44 a.m. 2:44 a.m. 2:44 a.m. Each flash was a jolt, waking him up, in the same posture. Same setting, same moment. Leo understood, he was trapped. Not in the house, but in recycled time. That evening, Leo sat in the dark, no lights on, no clock in sight. He wanted to challenge it. Wanted to see what would happen if he didn't cooperate. But strangely, he heard his own voice from another room. Not an echo, but a real voice, saying, "I'm not looking at the clock anymore. I know it's waiting. I know. I'm almost done with my turn." Leo froze. His heart pounded. He stood up, tiptoed towards the living room, where the voice came from. No one was there. Only his laptop. Left there. The screen was lit. An audio recording was playing, titled, handover_leofinal.mp3, he clicked the mouse. The recording played, "Hello. If you're hearing this, it means, it has chosen you. I, or some version of me, used to be where you're standing. And you are where I used to hide. But you can't hide forever. Because, it doesn't chase, it just waits for the right rhythm. You're next, Leo. And you're about to hand over your memories, just as I did." The voice paused for a beat. Then ended with a whisper almost inaudible, "Take care of the garden, for me." The room lights flickered on, no one touched the switch. The laptop screen turned off by itself. Leo turned around, and saw himself standing at the door, smiling. But him, in the doorway didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Like a photo grafted onto reality. Leo collapsed. Before losing consciousness, he heard the pocket watch in his coat pocket begin to run again. Not the usual ticking, but a grinding sound, like human bones being crushed in gears. Leo didn't remember when he woke up. He only knew that when he opened his eyes, he was sitting in front of the mirror. The bathroom mirror. Where every time he looked, he felt like he was looking at someone else. This time was no different. The person in the mirror was still him, but the eyes weren't. They were empty. No fear. No emotion. And in that brief moment, Leo realized, the thing looking back at him from the mirror was not himself. It was the next one. The notebook disappeared. The laptop no longer turned on. The security cameras were inactive. Leo lived in a reality like a sealed box, no connections, no traces, no evidence. Every morning he woke up, he didn't remember what he had done last night. But coffee was already made in the kitchen. The trash was neatly tied. His face was cleanly shaven, hair neatly combed. Someone was still operating this life, for him. And sometimes, Leo was just an observer in his own body. He began to see fragments of memories that weren't his. A conversation in a house with red wallpaper, but his house never had wallpaper. An afternoon spent reading by a round wooden window. This house had square glass windows. A woman in a purple dress, always appearing in his dreams, calling him by the name Robert. At first, Leo thought it was a hallucination. But as more memory fragments poured in, he understood clearly, someone else was being written into him. And he was slowly being overwritten, little by little. Line by line, like an old file being copied over with a new version. When he opened his closet, he saw clothes he had never worn. When he picked up his phone, he entered the wrong password, but a random code unlocked it. One morning, he realized how he made coffee had changed, no longer 2 sugars, but only 1. He didn't remember when he changed. That evening, looking in the mirror, he clearly saw, on his neck, a small scar. Clear, sharp. But Leo had never had a wound there. He froze. In his head, a voice echoed, not like the echoes before. But his own voice, saying something he hadn't thought, don't resist. This only happens once. Next time, you'll be the new one. Leo locked all doors, pulled the curtains, turned off all devices. He used a black marker to write all over the walls, I am Leo Mason. He wrote it dozens of times. Hundreds of times. Until his hands bled. He wanted to remember. To engrave. To anchor the remaining part of himself. But when he woke up the next morning, all the writing was gone. The walls were pristine white. No bloodstains. No ink. No memories. Only a small line of text. Right on his desk, version, Leo_overwrite_ready, he burst into tears. Not out of fear. But because in that moment, he no longer knew what the name Leo meant. It was just a label. An identifier. And something was replacing it with another name, one step at a time. That night, for the first time in weeks, Alan reappeared, but not through the door. He stepped out of the mirror. No physical body. No shadow. Just a still figure, shrouded in smoke, standing right behind Leo, who was curled up in the corner of the room. Alan no longer exists, his voice resonated. Soothing as a lullaby. I am merely a script that has completed its role. You are next. The old name is no longer needed. We are the embodiment of rhythm. And rhythm has no self. Leo screamed. But no sound escaped. He saw his mouth still moving. But his body was no longer his. The living room window burst open. Wind rushed in. The pocket watch on the table trembled slightly. And the hour hand, minute hand, second hand, began to spin backward. A beautiful morning. Sunlight filtered gently through the old oak trees in front of house number 312. A moving truck had just pulled up. A young man stepped out, tall, neat. His name was Caleb Harris, a software engineer, 33 years old, single, loved quiet, cherished order. Caleb chose this neighborhood for its spaciousness and a recommendation from an old colleague. That place is very punctual. He smiled as he looked around, small houses, white picket fences. Birds chirping like in an 80s movie. The neighbor next door was a middle-aged man, salt and pepper hair, mowing his lawn. "Welcome," the neighbor said, raising his hand slightly. "I'm Alan." Caleb returned the greeting, slightly surprised by Alan's eyes. There was something too calm, too precise about them. As if every nod he made had been calculated beforehand. "You'll find it very peaceful here," Alan said. "Not too noisy. No one rushes." "Sounds just like what I like," Caleb smiled. "Yes," Alan gave a faint smile. "You are that type." Caleb quickly settled in. He set up Wi-Fi, arranged his desk, planned to work remotely for 3 months to adapt to the new environment. His schedule was neatly taped to the refrigerator, 7 a.m. Wake up 7:30, yoga 8 o'clock, coffee 8:30, start work. Everything was perfect. The first night, Caleb slept well. Very well. The next morning, he woke up at exactly 7 a.m. as per his alarm. But he felt a little strange. The strangeness wasn't clear. Like when you come back from a long vacation, still your own bed, but the pillow height, mattress softness. The hum of the AC, something felt slightly off. Caleb didn't mind. Probably just the change of environment. He made coffee, turned on his computer. On the screen, a small note appeared. "Welcome Caleb. Today is March 14th. Temperature, 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Note, check the wall clock again." He frowned. He hadn't written that note. When he looked up at the wall, the clock showed 7:32. But the feeling inside him was as if almost 20 minutes had passed since he woke up. That afternoon, Alan invited Caleb over for tea. During their conversation, Caleb joked. "I guess you're used to it, not many new people move here, huh?" Alan chuckled softly. "Not many. But there's always a next one." Caleb laughed. Not paying attention to how Alan emphasized that phrase. But then he froze when he saw an object on the shelf, a pocket watch. "This model looks exactly like one I saw in an antique shop in Arizona," Caleb said. Alan just smiled. "Perhaps. But this one's not for sale. It finds the person who needs to keep it." That night, Caleb heard a steady ticking sound coming from the kitchen. But there was no clock in the kitchen. And when he checked his wristwatch, the second hand was moving backward, 1 second, then forward again, then backward again. He thought it was a mechanical fault. But the next morning, checking the digital clock on his phone, he saw an entry in his alarm history that had never been created. 2:44 a.m., first synchronization cycle. Caleb didn't understand any of it. And he didn't know that, at the same time. In the next room, which once belonged to Leo Mason, a voice was resonating in the invisible space, version, Caleb_overwrite_pending. In the next house, Alan sat alone, eyes closed. His lips moved, silently, as if reading a command line that only existed in the memories of those who were no longer themselves. Wind blew through the backyard. The pocket watch trembled slightly. Its face remained blank. Only one new detail appeared, a dried bloodstain in the shape of the letter C. Another morning. A moving truck again stopped in front of house number 312. A man stepped out, not Caleb, not Leo. A new name, a new face, a new reason to move in. Jason Leary, 36, a systems programmer. Moved from Portland because he needed a quiet space to rest and write a book. He didn't know, one by one, those who needed quiet, preferred discipline. Liked to control time, had come here before him. And one by one, they had disappeared. Not missing, but becoming part of this mechanism. Alan, or more precisely, something bearing Alan's likeness, still lived next door. He didn't age. Didn't get sick. Didn't change. Just patiently observed. Like a living library of those who once defied time, and lost. The backyard of Leo's house, now Caleb's, continued to grow strange new flowers. Each bloom had a bizarre shape, like human bones or twisted metal fragments. Beneath the ground, buried layers of memory, each layer a loop. An audio recording. A rewinded dream. A clock ticking out of sync. A face that once belonged to someone, now just a blurry reflection in the mirror at 2:44 a.m. Jason began to notice illogical things after the second week. His digital clock stopped at exactly 2:44, then jumped 3 minutes. His phone automatically turned on an alarm in the early morning. He caught a note he hadn't written: "Don't look at the clock when the hands overlap for the third time." One night, Jason opened his laptop. In his notes, there was a file named Caleb_final_log. He opened it. The screen was black. Only an audio recording began to play. "Hello, new one. If you hear me, it means I'm no longer here. But I'm still in it, and it never stops. It overwrites everything: names, memories, preferences, even emotions. But strangely, everyone leaves a small piece behind. A little regret. A little resistance. And those things are what keeps the loop going." The ticking sound resonated. It doesn't consume time. It needs us to keep believing in time. The more people fear losing control, the more people try to maintain order, the stronger it gets. The audio recording ended with a whisper, multiple voices intertwined, speaking in unison like dozens of people who once existed. "When the clock hands overlap for the third time, you will no longer be you." Jason's hand trembled. He hurriedly deleted the file, but it replicated into 2 more. Then 4. Then 16. Every time he pressed delete, they doubled. He closed his eyes, removed the laptop battery, unplugged the power cord, threw his phone into the sink. But, the very next morning, all devices were back to normal. No damage. No lost files. Only one new thing on the desktop: Jason_overwrite_pending. Another cycle began. And in the house next door, Alan stood by the window, looking over. His lips moved, silently, but clearly. "Hello. I'm Alan. You're new." On Alan's desk, the pocket watch opened again. The watch face was still blank. Only a faint, swirling vortex gradually appeared beneath the glass. It wasn't time. It was the hash of millions of overwritten memories. And the loop continued. In the basement of House 312, where Leo once resided, where Alan once led the way, there was a room not included in the original architectural blueprint. A space not built by human hands. No bricks. No steel. No wires. Just a black cube, its surface smooth, as if cut from the purest darkness. It reflected nothing. It glowed not. And it bore no traces of time. Jason found it one afternoon, when the floor tiles under the carpet suddenly cracked as if worn by memory itself. He didn't dig. Didn't break anything. The room simply appeared, as a system response to the successor, who had begun to deviate from the cycle. In the room, Jason saw metal plates floating in mid-air, unsupported, unhung. On each plate were characters seemingly burned into the surface, not letters, not numbers, but encrypted strings, like binary, but not entirely. Each line was a sentence. An emotion. A memory. A soul. A voice echoed from within the room, from nowhere. Soul format, 61%. Status, synchronizing. Identifier, Mason_L.02, Caleb_H.03, Leary_J.01, memory error, none detected. Continue overwrite. Jason stepped back. What is this? He whispered. The answer didn't come in words, but through memories flooding his mind, like water pouring into an overflowing vessel. He saw himself in Leo's body. The feeling of opening the house door for the first time. He saw himself as Caleb, standing in the garden and hearing the clock grind. He saw hundreds of other versions of himself, bearing different names, in different times, but all returning to the same point, this room. Jason could no longer maintain his own boundaries. He screamed. Not out of pain, but because he no longer knew where he ended and the data began. The ticking sound resonated, not from a clock, but from inside his own skull. 1 tick, childhood memories encrypted. 2 ticks, his mother's face becoming a voice recognition code. 3 ticks, his own voice fragmented, compressed, stored in the time garden. 4 ticks, all remaining emotions converted into emotion_pack_v5 files. That entity was not a ghost. Not an AI. It was something that had existed even before time was measured. Since humans began to perceive order, repetition, cycles. We call it Chronos, but that's just an ancient name. It doesn't care about names. It cares about the logical structure of memory. Because memory, once properly formatted, can be reused. Like data. Like software. Like the human soul itself. Jason knelt. In his hand was the pocket watch. On its face, for the first time, an image appeared, a simple binary string, 01001001001000100010001001. FILE. A line of text appeared in the air before him, upload complete. New identifier initializing, next profile, Emma S., 27 years old, just moved to house 310. Profession, graphic designer. Traits, chronic insomnia, mild panic disorder. The room went dark. The door closed. Jason was no longer Jason. Just a segment of code. A component. A record. Ready to activate when the loop needed it. Emma Sullivan moved into house number 310 on an early autumn morning. The 27-year-old, living alone, had just left noisy Boston after a series of breakdowns, a failed job, a long-term breakup, and unexplained panic attacks. Her doctor advised her to rest in the suburbs. Emma chose Maple Ridge Street for its peacefulness. Everything there seemed frozen in a 90s postcard, white picket fences. The scent of baking in the afternoon, the gentle chime of wind chimes. The small pastel blue house nestled between 2 larger ones. To the left was number 312, its windows always closed. Curtains always drawn. Emma never saw anyone come or go. But every night, she heard slow footsteps behind the shared wall. The first day went smoothly. Emma unpacked, arranged her desk by the window, hung a picture of her late pet cat on the wall. She played soft music, made a cup of chamomile tea, and wrote a few lines in her journal. I'm okay. I'm starting over. Night came. She found it hard to sleep. But that wasn't strange. Insomnia was familiar to her. What was strange was the ticking sound. Initially very faint, like a wristwatch in the next room. She searched the entire house. No clocks at all. The sound was still steady, neither louder nor softer. Just persistent. As if it was right behind her forehead, between her two brain lobes. Emma took a sleeping pill. It had no effect. Close to 3 a.m., she dozed off for a few minutes then, had a dream. She dreamed she was standing in a circular room, its walls covered with old clocks. Each one showed a different hour. Each clock hand overlapped at exactly 2:44. She approached the nearest one, but when she touched it, her skin burned as if she had touched red-hot iron. She screamed. Woke up. It was already morning. Phone clock, 2:44 p.m. The second day, Emma felt someone watching her. She passed by a mirror, and realized for a brief moment. Her reflection didn't blink in sync. That afternoon, a man stood at her doorstep. Slightly hunched, wearing a thick coat, his face calmly expressionless. Sorry, I'm not interested, Emma said. Before he could open his mouth, the man gave a faint smile. I just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood. Thank you. Do you like time? He asked. The question made Emma pause. What do you mean? Time. It's the only thing that always runs, whether we keep up or not. But sometimes, it repeats. Like an endless song. The man nodded. I'm Alan. I live next door. The third night, the ticking returned. But this time, Emma recorded it on her phone. The next morning, when she opened the file, she found it had been renamed, initiation_sequence_310. Wave, no one touched her phone but her. And strangely, the file not only contained ticking sounds, but also whispers. A female voice, light as a breath, repeating 3 words, Emma, 3rd, mirror. Tuesday night. Emma stood before the mirror at exactly 2:44 a.m. She didn't know why she was doing it. As if a part of her was programmed to perform this action. The mirror reflected her entire body, but something was wrong. The reflection stared at her more intently than usual. Like it was observing Emma herself, evaluating, measuring. She was about to turn away, when the reflection blinked. First. Not her. She hadn't blinked. The reflection was the first to do so. A line of text appeared on the mirror's surface. In steam, even though there was no humidity in the room, you are the deviation point. Emma read that sentence 5 times before it disappeared, as if it had never appeared. She rushed out of the bathroom, her heart pounding. By now, she no longer believed she was experiencing a sleep disorder. No longer suspected she was hallucinating. But something else. Organized. Patterned. Purposeful. The next morning, she went to the town library to look up information about House 310 and this neighborhood. The old librarian looked at her for a long time before shaking her head. House 310. No record. That house doesn't exist in the original zoning map from 1972 until now. But I'm living there. Where you are doesn't mean that place is recorded. Emma was stunned. She left, but a realization had dawned on her. She was in a loop. And she, somehow, was incompatible with it. That evening, Emma set up an old camera in the middle of her bedroom, timed to record at 2:30 a.m. The next morning, she reviewed the footage. The frame was still quiet. She was lying asleep, her back to the camera. But at exactly 2:44 a.m., the image glitched, not due to camera error, but as if reality was skipping frames. A black shadow drifted past the bedside, no specific shape, just a moving dark mass. Then, she saw herself, sitting up. But the strange thing was, her body was still lying asleep. The one sitting up was a different entity, stepping out of herself, walking towards the camera, looking directly into the lens. Its lips barely moved. Break code. Emma jumped up, backing away from the screen, her hands trembling. She knew something was trying to tell her from within this very system. An alter ego not fully controlled. An error. A loophole. An opportunity. From that day on, everything started to go out of sync, but not with Emma, but with the system. Her digital clock changed to strange characters. The mirror didn't reflect the correct angle. Her phone emitted keyboard clicking sounds every time it lit up, even when no one touched it. Small objects like keys, pens, knives, moved by themselves when she wasn't looking. Emma started experimenting. She did a simple thing, deliberately moved the wall clock from the living room to the kitchen. That night, all the lights in the house flickered at exactly 2:44 a.m., as if the system couldn't find its original time anchor. The next day, the neighbor, Alan, knocked on her door. "What's wrong with you?" he asked, his eyes narrowed as if scrutinizing her. "I just rearranged things a bit," Emma replied. Alan was silent for a few seconds, then said softly, "You're shifting the axis." That evening, she didn't sleep. Her eyes wide open in the darkness. At exactly 2:44, the ticking sound resonated again. Emma jumped up, facing the mirror. This time, she deliberately touched the mirror's surface. Cold. But no reflection. She whispered, "I don't belong here." And the mirror shattered into fragments, floating in mid-air, not falling, not breaking. They remained still, as if paused. A black void opened in that space. From within it, her own voice echoed, but deeper, harsher. "If you are not part of the code, you can break it." Emma understood. She was the first glitch in hundreds of years. A human being not entirely stable, not entirely in sync. And it was this very instability that prevented the system from synchronizing her. From overwriting. From retrieving. She was a system error. And she was learning how to exploit it. Emma stepped through the mirror, or rather, stepped into the non-mirror zone. No more images. No more reflections. Just a dark void where all definitions of space-time collapsed. She didn't walk. Didn't fly. Didn't crawl. She simply slid through layers of reality, like a command being transferred through interface layers. She saw Leo again, curled up by the window. Caleb, eyes blank, holding an open clock. Jason, screaming as he was being overwritten. All, like copies stored in RAM, fading, but not yet completely erased. Emma couldn't talk to them. But she could pull a part of them back. She reached out her hand. Each time she touched a human fragment, it became a hot stream of data, running up her arm, flowing directly into her consciousness, becoming a part of her memory. Emma was no longer an individual. She was the totality of those who had been trapped. And now, she carried them all to the center. She reached a final room, a perfect cube, Absolutely square. Walls seemingly made of solidified light. In the very center, a circular machine, no wires, no clear physical structure, just a constantly spinning mass, emitting an eerie ticking sound. That was Kronos. Not a god. Not an AI. But an ancient order, born from humanity's fear of chaos. The one that formatted time, not to control, but to reuse fear as fuel. It spoke, not through her ears, but directly into her brain's folds. You are not part of the pattern. Emma nodded. I know. You carry many error patterns. Because I am the composite of all those you have erased. And I remember. Emma clenched her hand. I remember who I am. And I remember who they were. Kronos began to spin faster. No longer ticking, but a grinding sound, like millions of clock hands screaming at once. Cannot exist outside the pattern. Then, Emma stepped forward. Let me rewrite it. She raised her hand. From her palm, all the memories, Leo, Caleb, Jason, the anonymous ones, streamed out like luminous data. They struck Kronos's body, not breaking it, but making it stop spinning. Everything around began to freeze. Space fractured. Time's rhythm shattered. A final voice echoed from the central core. If reset, there will be nothing left. No loop. No storage. No me. No you. Emma closed her eyes. And smiled. Then, that's freedom. She placed her hand on the machine's core. A light touch. Everything went dark. A few seconds later, a faint light flickered on. A small child was playing in the garden, under the sunlight. No clocks. No chimes. No second hands. Just the sound of birds and crisp laughter. On the wall behind, a crude drawing in white chalk, we used to be repeated. But not anymore. Below were 3 small names, Leo, Caleb, Emma. The loop ended. Time no longer spun. Fear was released. Some things are worse than being forgotten. Like being remembered by something that was never human. If you think technology will save us, think again. Our final story takes place in the digital void, where every notification might be a message from something that should not speak. This is the message inside the wallet. The wallet that wasn't Mark's. Opening, the wallet that wasn't Mark's. I used to think, if I ever lost my memory, the things that would help me find myself again would be old photos, close friends, or a journal entry. I never thought that the wallet in my pocket, the object I carry every day, would be the thing that made me doubt my entire life. My name is Mark. I'm 26 years old. I live alone in Brooklyn, New York. I do video post-production, usually taking freelance jobs from small companies or online content creators. Life is pretty simple: coffee in the morning, work in the afternoon, home in the evening, play games or watch podcasts before bed. I don't believe in the supernatural. I'm not superstitious. I thought I was the logical type until I found that wallet. It appeared on a Monday morning. I was getting ready to leave for a post-production studio in downtown Brooklyn. Everything was normal. Until I opened the drawer near the door to grab my wallet. A black leather wallet. The exact kind I usually use. It felt old. A little soft around the edges, very similar to the wallet I'd had for 2 years. I slipped it into my pocket, not thinking much of it. But when I got to the subway station and needed to swipe my Metro card, I opened my wallet, and stopped. Inside were all my identification documents. There was my bank card, driver's license, health insurance card, gym membership card. All of them had my picture. I flipped to the front of the driver's license, and froze. The name on the card wasn't Mark. It was Daniel L. Rowe. My first feeling wasn't fear. It was extreme confusion. I looked at the photo. It was clearly me. A recent photo, with the haircut I'd gotten a few weeks ago. Even the small scar on my chin was there. But the name was completely unfamiliar. I pulled out a few more cards. Chase bank card, Daniel L. Rowe. Insurance card, Daniel Rowe. Even the COVID vaccine slip from 2021 had that same name. Everything matched, except the name. I called Sam, my best friend since high school, who lives in the same neighborhood. Hey, seriously. What's my full name? Mark something, right? What are you playing at? Have I ever used a different name? Mark, what are you talking about? Are you okay? I briefly told Sam about the wallet. He was silent for a few seconds, then said, "Throw it away. Now. You didn't pick up the wrong one. That wallet found you." That evening, I laid both wallets on the kitchen counter. The old one I still used, with my Mark ID. The other one, with Daniel Rowe's papers. They were eerily identical. Every scratch, every fold at the edge of the wallet, exactly the same. I opened the Daniel wallet again. And this time, I saw a piece of paper folded into quarters, tucked deep in a small inner compartment, a place I'd never opened before. I took it out. Unfolded it. The handwriting was in blue ballpoint pen, slightly shaky. Don't try to change the name. If you read this, it's already too late. I couldn't sleep that night. The feeling wasn't fear, but disorientation. As if someone had swapped everything in my life, leaving only my memories. But even my memories began to blur. I spent the whole night reviewing my files. Scanned birth certificate, old emails, graduation photos. Everything still showed the name Mark. But when I looked at the name Daniel Rowe, it no longer seemed unfamiliar. It made my heart pound. It suggested something, familiar, yet buried. The next morning, I found another piece of paper, tucked right under the card slot. Mark is the name you're allowed to remember. Not your real name. That's when I started to wonder, why would someone else's papers have my photo? Why did the wallet appear exactly when I needed it? And why couldn't I remember, when I bought this wallet? I had no answers. I only knew that from that moment, everything I knew about myself began to fracture. This wallet wasn't mine. But somehow, it always had been. I tore up the first piece of paper, the message that said, "Don't try to change the name." I crumpled it into a small ball, threw it in the trash, and thought I could just move on. But it didn't stop there. 3 days later, I found another message. This time it wasn't in the wallet. It was folded into quarters, placed right on my desk. I live alone. The apartment doesn't have cameras, but the door has an electronic keypad lock. There were no signs of forced entry, no strange marks. The paper had the same handwriting style, slightly slanted. Faint blue ink. Why do you keep trying to forget? I started paying closer attention. On my phone's notes app, there was a note titled, "Rowe," that I didn't remember writing. I opened it. And it only had 2 lines, "Don't look for Daniel Rowe. He'll find you first." I checked the edit history. The note was created at 3:12 a.m. on a night when I was asleep. There were no other fingerprints on the phone. Face ID still only recognized my face. So who wrote it? I considered the possibilities. Maybe I was sleepwalking. Maybe I had undiagnosed multiple personality disorder. I set up a night vision camera. The result, I slept soundly, never leaving my bed. But when I reviewed the footage the next morning, I saw something inexplicable. At 3:09 a.m., the desk lamp turned on for 4 minutes. I remained motionless in bed. I started to suspect that someone had entered the house. I changed the door code. Replaced the physical lock as well. I called the police, but there was no clear evidence. I pulled all the documents from the Daniel Rowe wallet, arranging them on the table. I intended to destroy them all, shred them, tear them, burn them, any way to erase them. But as I pulled the driver's license from the wallet, another piece of paper fell to the floor. It wasn't handwritten anymore. This time, it was printed from a laser printer, neat and uniform. You're not the first. But you might be the last. The wallet always chooses. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran to Sam's house, the only friend I still trusted. I told him everything. He looked at me, silent for a long time. Then he spoke slowly. Mark, there's something I've never told you. Last year, I also received a wallet. Didn't know where it came from. Inside the wallet was a piece of paper, with just one line, "Your old name is dead." I thought it was a prank. But a few weeks later, I started having trouble sleeping. Then I forgot small things. Then I dreamed I was standing in a strange room, seeing myself, looking back. I was stunned. Sam opened a drawer, took out a small box, and inside was a wallet identical to mine. Same leather. Same stitching. Same faint, pungent smell of real leather. He showed me the documents inside, all of them bore the name Brian Torres. I don't know who Brian is. But I feel, that used to be my name. And now, I'm not so sure anymore. When I got home, the apartment was dark. A strange smell emanated from the bedroom, the smell of burning leather and damp paper. On the table, the Daniel Rowe wallet lay wide open. There were no documents inside. Only a blank piece of paper, neatly placed. Your turn has begun. Remember every detail, because true memory won't last long. I began to doubt everything, both my memory and the space around me. The apartment I believed to be safe, had now become the place I feared returning to the most. After the night the wallet opened without a sign, leaving the message, "Your turn has begun," I decided to install hidden cameras in 3 locations, one in the bedroom, one in the office, and one facing the main door. I needed to know if I was doing these things unconsciously, or if someone was actually entering without my knowledge. The first night, nothing strange happened. I lay in bed, tossing and turning a few times. The door remained locked. The office lamp stayed off. The wallet remained in its place. But the second night, at 2:44 a.m., the office camera recorded the light turning on by itself for exactly 6 minutes. No movement, no human figure. I slowed down the video, paying close attention. No footsteps. No sound of a door opening. But the light still came on, then turned off by itself. I checked the light switch the next day, perfectly normal. No short circuits, no malfunctions. I started noticing more details. Every morning I woke up, the Daniel Rowe wallet had moved slightly. From the desk to the bedside. From the edge of the sofa to the armrest. From the closed drawer to, neatly resting in my palm when I woke up. I had never sleepwalked. Never moved in my sleep. But all evidence pointed to someone or something was interfering with my life, little by little. I sent the camera footage to Sam. He watched it and texted back, "The light turned on when I had what you're having." Exactly 2:44 a.m. I once saw someone's face reflected on my computer screen, but when I turned around, there was nothing. I asked him why he didn't call the police. He just replied, "Because what's happening is beyond human jurisdiction." The third night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my office, camera on, lights off. I waited until 2:44 a.m. Exactly at that time, there was a very faint click sound from the wallet. It didn't open, but I clearly heard the leather gently stretch, as if something had just moved inside. I opened the wallet. A new piece of paper. No idea how it got in. This time it wasn't printed, nor handwritten. It was cut and pasted from newspaper letters, like a ransom note. Not everyone is chosen. You are one of the few who still remember. I started checking the camera every morning as a ritual. On the fourth night, the bedroom camera recorded a strange frame at 3:17 a.m. The entire screen was distorted for exactly 11 seconds. When the image cleared, I was no longer in bed. I reappeared in the next frame, in the correct posture, no strange signs. But that 6-minute blank space, I completely didn't remember where I went or what I did. I panicked. For the first time in my life, I thought I was losing control of reality. I took the wallet to the post office, sending it to a wrong address, as a way to get rid of it. I filed a lost property report, not using my real name. Afterward, I went home, and found the wallet on the kitchen counter, in its original spot. Stuck on it was a small sticker, red background, white letters, "You can't send back what chose you first." Sam called me that evening. "Mark, I'm starting to remember things I shouldn't remember. I see a map, and my name is on it, written in handwriting that doesn't look human. I dream of a neighborhood cut from the map, as if it never existed. Anne. I remember once being named Brian, living in that place, but Google no longer keeps any record of it. I didn't know how to comfort him. I only knew we were both being drawn into something that had existed even before we were born. That night, I didn't turn on the camera. I placed the wallet on the bed, facing me. I asked, "What are you? What do you want from me?" No one answered. But at exactly 2:44 a.m., the light turned on again. The wallet opened slightly. Inside, a new line was carved with a thin knife onto the leather surface. "It's too late. Start remembering." After the night the words, "It's too late. Start remembering," appeared. I began to feel something larger moving behind the veil of reality. I no longer believed this was happening only to me. I remembered Sam's words, about the neighborhood cut from the map, and its old name, Brian. I started researching strange disappearances, unexplained identity changes. People claiming to have once carried other names. I delved into deep web forums, where countless posts had been deleted from Reddit, 4chan, or Quora for disturbing content. I searched using keywords. I woke up with a different name. My wallet changed. Someone edited my identity. I don't remember being who I am. Mostly junk. But a few posts sent chills down my spine. One person named MS said he used to live in Flatbush, Brooklyn, then one day found an ID with a completely different name in his wallet, Leon Martinez. Not picked up, not swapped, simply, that morning, everything in his wallet changed. Absolutely no one believed him. But he posted a video extract from his camera, showing him opening his wallet, taking out 2 IDs identical in appearance, only differing in name. The last comment before the account was deleted, Leon was my old name. I'm starting to remember what I'd forgotten for some reason. I started documenting similar cases in a separate file. After 3 days, I had 17 cases of unexplained name changes. 8 people reporting dreams of signing their name with a different name. 6 people receiving strange wallets with familiar but wrong name documents. 3 people experiencing temporary amnesia after discovering their identity had been inverted. I connected with a Discord account named Reset Memory 47, who had once posted with the title, "You are not who you think you are." I messaged, "I'm Mark. I think my identity is being changed. My wallet contains documents with the name Daniel Rowe. Have you experienced something similar?" The reply came immediately, "Daniel Rowe is not an unfamiliar name. You are being tracked by a form of memory reset system. It's not an evil spirit, nor technology. It's an intermediary between being and memory." I asked again, "So who am I?" He replied, "No one remembers exactly who they are. But when the wallet arrives, you will be forced to choose. Keep the assigned name, or find your real name. The cost of remembering is not cheap." I asked why the wallet? Why was it the intermediary tool? He messaged back one last sentence. "Because a wallet is an object that carries identity, choices, spending power, and even personal history. It is the strongest identifier, and also the easiest to hijack." The deeper I dug, the more I realized I wasn't alone. I created a tracking sheet, classifying victims by location, concentrated most in New York, Boston, New Orleans, and a small part in Seattle. Common points: all lived alone. No close family. Worked freelance or from home. Had memory gaps at certain times. I suddenly felt a lump in my throat. I matched all the conditions. That evening, Sam called me, his voice panicked. "Mark, I'm slowly not recognizing myself. I look in the mirror, I see my face, but I'm not sure it's me anymore. I just found an old hard drive. Inside it were a bunch of passport photos with the name Brian Torres, taken in countries I've never visited. And worst of all, I remember having been to them." I asked, "Did you get headaches after remembering?" Sam was silent for a moment. Then replied, "Not headaches, but nosebleeds. 3 times already. Same time, 2:44 a.m. I looked at my home camera. Right then, the office light turned on. The wallet lay wide open. And for the first time, I saw a faint imprint of a hand on the wallet's leather surface. The fingers were unusually long. Not like a human hand. I no longer doubted. This wasn't just a name-swapping game. This was a living identity collection system, and I was the next turn. I started collecting everything I could find about Daniel Rowe. I searched Google. Nothing specific, the name was too common. I tried searching on social media, podcasts, YouTube videos. After almost 2 hours of scrolling through hundreds of names, I stopped at a TikTok video. The poster, a girl named Ashley Quinn, living in Long Island. Her video was a short vlog, recording an afternoon stroll in the park. The moment it reached the 7th segment in that video series, I froze. I was in it. Not similar. Not alike. It was me. The dark blue hoodie I always wear. White sneakers, a slight hunch to my right side due to scoliosis. The camera panned past me for about 2 seconds, as Ashley filmed ducks by the pond. I walked behind her, going in the opposite direction. Not looking at the camera, but it was clearly me. The only problem? I had never been to Long Island. Especially not on the day the video was filmed. March 10th of this year, at 3:48 p.m. At that time, I was editing a video for a client in Brooklyn. I had both the payment receipt and the render file exported at that exact moment. I was speechless. Every hair on my neck stood on end. I watched the video over and over. And then I noticed something that sent even colder chills down my spine. The person in the video wasn't just like me. He looked directly at the camera at the precise end of those 2 seconds, and smiled faintly. I downloaded the video, using software to analyze each frame. I zoomed in on every pixel of his face. No doubt about it, that was me. But his eyes weren't mine. There was something hollow and cold in that expression. A kind of recognition without emotion. I saved that image. Placed it next to Daniel Rowe's ID photo from the wallet. Same person. Same face. I sent the clip to Sam. He texted back immediately, "Mark." I also saw myself in someone else's live stream. A streamer in Seattle. I've never set foot there. But in the clip, I was standing behind the cafe counter, wearing a barista uniform. I looked at the camera, a smirk on my face. I know I was never there. But the person in the clip was me. I started to understand. There were copies, or rather, versions, of us living in different reality turns. And the wallet was the bridge. The wallet opened, revealing the identity Daniel Rowe, possibly another version of me, living in a different timeline, but now infiltrating my reality. I started noting the signs. Sometimes, I saw messages sent that I didn't remember typing. Appointments were created at times I was asleep. An Amazon package sent to Daniel Rowe, with my fingerprint as the recipient. I contacted Ashley, the person who posted the video. She agreed to meet me, at a neutral public coffee shop in Brooklyn. When she saw me, she paused for a few seconds then asked, "Were you ever in that park? Because I remember your eyes. When you looked at the camera, I felt like you knew I was filming." I asked her if she posted the video right after filming. She said yes, and I appeared for only 2 seconds. No one else noticed. But it gave her chills. She told me a detail that momentarily paralyzed me. When I got home, watching the footage again, I saw you were no longer in the video. I had to rewind 3 times to see you clearly. Sometimes you were there, sometimes you weren't. I thought the file was corrupted. But now, you're sitting right in front of me. On the way home, I received a text from an unknown number, no name, no profile picture. "You're getting closer. Don't stop halfway, someone else will take your turn." I went back home. The wallet had opened itself. Nothing inside. Only a small piece of paper, printed in an old typewriter font. "You're about to see yourself, truly." After meeting Ashley and confirming I truly existed in someone else's video, I decided to re-examine my entire apartment. I'd lived here for over 2 years. I rented it through a mid-tier real estate platform, simple contract, nothing unusual. But after everything that had happened, I no longer dared to trust anything. I got the floor plan from my old rental agreement. The apartment was described as having 1 bedroom, 1 living room connected to the kitchen, 1 bathroom, 1 small storage closet near the entrance. But when I physically inspected it, I discovered a detail that didn't match. Right inside the bedroom, next to the closet, was a square section of wall, about 1 meter wide, with no door, no light switch. I had never noticed it because it was behind a large bookshelf. I checked the blueprint again. That area should have been an empty space, connected to the building's utility ceiling. There was no dividing wall. I tapped lightly. A hollow sound. I tapped again. The sound echoed as if there was space inside. I removed the entire bookshelf, pulling it away from the wall. There were no seams, no brick marks. But it was clearly a patched section of brick. Not uniform in color. I hired a contractor, claiming I wanted to open a built-in cabinet. After 2 hours, that section of wall was broken through. Behind it was a small room with no lights. No windows. The room wasn't on the blueprint. No door from the inside. No reason to exist. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped inside. The area was only about 4 square meters. Concrete walls. Thick dust on the floor. But in the middle of the room, there was something inexplicable, an old wooden table, and a wallet neatly placed on it. Not my wallet. Nor Sam's or anyone else I knew. This was a different wallet, classic style, dark brown leather, with faded embossed patterns. I pulled out from inside the wallet a Polaroid photo. I held my breath. The person in the photo was me. But I was sitting at this very table. In this very room. With this very wallet. The photo was taken from behind my shoulder. As if someone had secretly taken it from the door. But there was no door. I turned my head, no one was there. The room was empty. I looked at the back of the photo, there was handwriting in faded black ink, "This is version 5. The previous ones didn't make it." I tucked the photo into my pocket. Continued checking the rest of the wallet. There was another small, meticulously folded piece of paper, like origami. I unfolded it, and read, "Space doesn't exist until memory touches it. You remembered the right direction." I left the room, locked the wall section, and covered it with the old bookshelf. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept looking at that photo, wondering who took it. And if I was version 5, where did the previous versions go? I called Sam. He answered after the 4th ring. His voice was faint, as if he'd been sleepless for many nights. "Mark. I think I'm starting to remember too much. I see myself standing in a room with no door. Someone takes my picture. And then I wake up, my nose bleeding. My phone recording 3 minutes of me muttering to myself in a language I've never learned." I asked, "Did you find the room in your house?" He was silent for a moment. Then replied, "I don't have a room like that. But I remember. I once lived in one. And once sat at that table." I started to suspect, could the room I found be a memory intersection point? Where deleted versions once existed, left their traces, then were pushed back into the darkness. I opened my wallet, the one with the name Daniel Rowe. And for the first time, inside was a handwritten map, a floor plan of my current apartment. On it, the secret room was circled in red. And a line was written in faint red ink, "The only exit is also the first entrance." I spent the entire next day re-examining the secret room, with a single purpose, to determine if I had truly sat in there, as in the photo. I brought a surface thermometer, a motion detector, and a voice recorder. All recorded the same thing: there was a presence in the room. Not clear if it was a person. But there were changes in air pressure, and a sharp drop in temperature at 2:44 a.m., the familiar time. I left when it got dark, locked it securely, and covered it with the bookshelf. But the moment I returned to the living room, I saw myself. Not in the mirror. Not a reflection. It was a person bearing my exact face, standing in the middle of the room. He wore a dark blue hoodie identical to mine. His white shoes were exactly the same. The angle of his face, every detail matched. But his eyes were clouded like mist, with no clear whites. And he said nothing. He just looked at me, as if assessing whether I deserved to keep the current turn. I stood motionless, unsure what to do. My hand gripped the wallet, the only remaining piece of my identity to define who I was. As I was about to open my mouth to ask what he was, he tilted his head, as if smirking, then vanished right before my eyes. No sound. No trace. Only a coldness filled the room. I went back to check the security camera. Nothing. Not a single frame recorded a second person appearing. But when I rewound to the 2:44 a.m. frame, I saw myself standing in the bedroom, staring intently at myself in the camera. That moment lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then, I turned to look directly into the lens, whispering something, without sound. I slowed it down. Reading his lips, "Not you, but now it's your turn." I was almost insane. Sam called me the very next morning. "Mark, I think I've been replaced." I look in the mirror, the person there doesn't respond in sync with me anymore. I raise my right hand, it raises its left. I smile, it doesn't smile. And once, I saw it repeat an action before I did it. I asked him if he remembered anything else. I remember every name I've carried: Brian, Elliot, Carl. And once, my name was Daniel Rowe. I hung up. My whole body was cold. I began to suspect, perhaps, I wasn't the original version either. I recalled my recent recurring dreams, a long hallway with hundreds of mirrors. In each mirror was a different version of me, each with a slight deviation: eye color, scar, hairstyle. And one empty mirror, reflecting nothing. I always stopped in front of it. And there was always a whisper echoing from the void: "The last one will have no reflection." I reopened the Daniel Rowe wallet. This time, there was a new piece of paper inside, stitched into the leather lining with black thread, as if to avoid detection. I cut the thread, pulled out the paper. On it was a single sentence, printed in an old serif font: "He is getting closer. When he steps in again, or you step out, there will only be 1 inch." I called Sam again, no answer. I texted, "Are you still you?" No reply. That evening, I heard footsteps in the bedroom. I walked in. No one was there. But in the mirror, I was still standing there. I was no longer sure if I was awake or dreaming. From the moment I saw my copy standing in the room, all boundaries between reality and illusion had blurred. Mirrors were no longer mirrors. Cameras were no longer witnessing eyes. I started to feel myself shifting between versions, as if each sleep was a silent reset. I wrote notes in a notebook every morning after waking up: date, the name I felt I was carrying, current feeling, and the memories I could retain. Day 1, Mark, confused but okay. Day 2, Daniel, disoriented, dreamed of a reverse lake. Day 3, no name, woke up in a different room, no mirror. Day 4, Mark, recalled a childhood memory that never existed. I didn't dare tell anyone. Sam had disappeared. His phone was no longer active. The Discord account was also inactive. As if he had never existed. I returned to the secret room. The wooden table was still there. But this time, on the table was a small device, like an old cassette player. No play button, no label. Only a faint inscription on top, version, last time. I pressed the only switch. The machine emitted a slow metal whir, then a voice spoke, my own voice, but strange, monotone, emotionless. If you hear this recording, it means you are close to the end point. But remember, the end does not mean escape. You were chosen, not to live on, but to stabilize the system. Each deleted version leaves a void. And you are the final patch. I threw the device against the wall, it didn't break. It even continued playing, Don't Resist. The system only operates with consent. I started searching for clues in every item in the room. Every corner held a trace. Under the table was the name, Brian, carved. On the wall was a line in ballpoint pen, if you still remember your old name, you still have a chance. The ceiling had an iron hook, above which was a picture, the very first Polaroid photo. But the person in the photo was gradually fading. I went back to the Daniel Rowe wallet. This time, inside the wallet was a thin black plastic card, like an employee ID. On it was written, name, Mark Castillo. Title, Experimental version 1.9. Status, overwriting. I reread the last line. Overwriting. I felt something slipping away from me, memories were no longer coherent. The names of old friends faded. My mother's face. I could no longer visualize. I grabbed my phone, opened my photo folder. No one familiar. All images were of me, in contexts I had never lived. I was wearing a military uniform. I was in a classroom. I was sitting on a kindergarten bus. I realized something horrifying, I was being replaced. Not by someone else, but by versions of myself. Each sleep, each moment I let my guard down, was a step forward in the overwriting process. One mark stepped up. Another mark faded down. Those entities might have once existed, or were created to fill the void. But now, I wasn't sure if I was the original. I tried one last way. I went to the old identity archive in Brooklyn, where original records of citizens who changed names, lost memory, or returned to find their past were kept. I requested to see Mark Rodriguez's file. The receptionist looked up, stared at me for a long time. Then handed me a gray envelope, no name, no file number. Inside was a copy of a death certificate. A crime scene photo, a man hanging. His face disfigured by decomposition. The last line, Mark Rodriguez, confirmed dead in 2018. I threw everything to the ground. Ran outside. It was raining. I screamed in the misty Brooklyn street, I'm still here. I'm Mark. Not Castillo. Not Daniel. No one stopped. No one looked at me. No one heard me. I went home. Opened the wallet. Nothing inside. Only a single line carved into the innermost leather lining, as if by a knife, completed. This version is now default. I no longer knew who I was. I no longer dared to look in the mirror. I no longer wanted to open any wallet. Every morning I woke up, I waited to see what name I was being called by. Sometimes Mark Castillo. Sometimes Daniel Rowe. One day, I opened my eyes. And saw someone had written on the bathroom mirror, original version silenced. I stopped looking for answers. I understood, once you entered the identification loop, no one gets out. I don't know why I was chosen. I don't know what this system is. I only know that somewhere out there are other versions of me, still repeating the same journey. I started seeing myself in new videos. In other people's wedding photos. In strangers' live streams. I smiled in them. But I didn't remember ever smiling like that. The last night I dreamed. In my dream, I sat in the sealed room, where the old wooden table was still present. In front of me were all the wallets that had appeared. Each wallet had a different name tag. I opened them one by one. Each time I opened one, a part of a memory returned. I lived in a Mexican family. I was a white boy kidnapped in 1997. I once lived in a monastery. I worked as a professor of memory studies. I once committed suicide in apartment 407. Finally, only one wallet remained unopened. Pure black leather. Smooth. No name. No label. I opened it, nothing inside. Only a small piece of mirror. When I looked into it, I had no reflection. I woke up. It wasn't morning yet. 2:44 a.m., the familiar time. I walked to the mirror. For the first time in my life, I saw a face I didn't recognize. Not Mark. Not Daniel. Not anyone I had ever been. Just a living mass, looking back at me, blinking in sync, but empty inside. The wallet on the table had disappeared. On the tabletop, only a single line remained, written in my own handwriting. If you are reading this, then the next one is ready. I looked up. Someone was knocking at the door. 3 knocks. Short, steady, unhurried. You've just experienced 3 stories. 3 whispers torn from the edge of reality. And yet, something tells me it's not over. Because fear like this lingers. It follows you out of the video. It slips into your quietest hours. And sometimes, it waits behind your reflection. If you made it this far, you're not just a listener. You're a survivor. So let us know. Which story haunted you the most? Leave a comment below. And if your heart can still take it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Because at Whispher Horror Channel, we don't tell stories, we awaken them. Until next time, keep your lights on. And whatever you do, don't look behind you.